Hi everyone, welcome to the Book Refuge, and today I'm telling you my favorite books of 2019. So this was a very hard list to make, and also I believe that in the beginning of the year that I really liked a lot of books more than I did in the second half of the year. I don't know what it was, but I think part of it is that I read a lot more romance in the second half of the year, and I think it either came out yesterday or will come out tomorrow. I made a separate video about all of my favorite romances, and so I went back through my list of 5 stars books, as well as books that were just really important to me and special to me, and it was really hard to make this list, but not because I was fighting over spaces at the top, but because I wasn't as connected with all of these as I have been in previous years. And so that's not a bad thing. We don't always read our new favorite novel, but I really hope that next year I feel a little bit more passionately about some of these is what I want. But that's all right. Let's just jump in and we'll go over my favorite reads this year, which is awesome. I don't have them in any order particularly. I tried, but I didn't end up having one that I'm like, it's a million times better than everything else. So let's start with 2 of them that I don't have with me. First, let's do The Bear and the Nightingale. I really have enjoyed the first 2 books in this series. I'm reading the last one in February, and I just really love Vasya, and I love the Winter Demon King guy, and I really love the magic, but the harsh reality of the life that the characters are living, the hard times. There's mental illness represented in an interesting way. There is religious persecution represented in an interesting way. And there is a kick-ass, amazing woman named Vasya who we get to see grow up through the series. And I just really like her. I really like the story being told. I really like the interesting dynamics of a lot of the characters. And I just had a really great time with it. It has stayed in my mind, and I can't wait to reread it. I sent both The Bear and the Nightingale and The Girl in the Tower to my friend Jo, and I'm kind of waiting for her to read them. She's going to annotate them for me. So when I get them back, I really look forward to rereading those books because I really enjoyed it. The next one, which my sister has right now, is A Curse So Dark and Lonely by Bridget Kimmerer. I loved this book. Oh, it was so fun to me. It was everything I love about a retelling. It was everything I love about specifically a Beauty and the Beast retelling. It has a tortured anti-hero, and it has an amazing girl who is a ball buster. I love Harper. She is amazing. Harper has a disability. She has cerebral palsy, and I've never seen it explained in the way it is in this book, and I had such a good time with it. I really liked it. There's also a character named Gray, who is the guardsman to Ren, who is the prince slash, beast that we're dealing with. And it was just such a fun retelling, as well as it really made me think about things. I actually got to read an arc of the sequel, which I'm not including in this list because it comes out next year. So if it makes the list next year, I'll talk about it then. But I really love where the story is going. It totally surprised me, and I'm very interested to see how this series continues or wraps up. Like, I am so intrigued. And so this one has stayed in my mind too as one that I just thought did things so differently, but in an exciting way for me, and I really loved it. All right, let's start going through this stack here. All right, I have North and South by Elizabeth Gaskell. This is my pretty Macmillan Press special edition. I love this book so much. This story, I had seen the BBC film many, many times, and I adored it so much. So I was afraid to read the classic. I was afraid that it wouldn't be what I wanted it to be and that it would ruin the show for me, because I would then have to take this as, the truth and not be able to enjoy, Margaret and John the way that I do in the show. But you know what? This story just made it all richer, and it didn't make that story any less to me, because I can see how they got those people from this, and I think they did it so faithfully. And Margaret is such a brat in the beginning of this book, and she just grows so much. I should tell you what this one is about, because you might not know. North and South is about this girl and her parents, who her father used to be a minister, and he doesn't agree with some changes the church has made, and so he leaves his living and takes his wife and daughter to the industrial North. And it's gritty and dirty and just, you know, not anything that they want it to be, and Margaret hates it there. And she meets John Thornton, who is a pupil of her father's, as well as a mill owner, and it's during the time of a lot of strikes and like strife in the town, and there's just a lot of stuff going on. And John is instantly in love with Margaret, and he kind of hates himself for it because he knows she's a little bit of a snob, but he loves her, and he's so vulnerable about it, and it's amazing. I just love it. I love it so much. It gave me just all the feels, and it was a really like easy read as well. It was amazing. I loved it so much. Next, my first ever graphic novel on a list like this, and that is Saga by Brian K. Vaughan and Fiona Staples. This series, the artwork is beautiful. This is definitely a grown-up story, by the way. It starts with a birth, and you just are like right up in the business. But this is about these two amazing people, and it's being told by a little girl. But this is about two amazing people who they're two different species, and they fell in love, and they have a baby. And look, she's freaking breastfeeding on the front. And the whole world, the whole galaxy is trying to take them down for it. It had a Star Wars vibe. It had a Firefly vibe. It had just so many vibes. It's so good. It's pretty dark. It was amazing. I've read all of the volumes that are out right now. There's only 9 volumes out right now, and they're taking a break from it. And I'm just like, please write more, because it had the worst cliffhanger, guys. The most painful cliffhanger ever. But I enjoyed it so much. I ripped through these in like, I think a week. I read all 10 volumes, or all 9 volumes. I loved it so much. And I'm not really into graphic novels. I've tried a few more since then, and I'm just not feeling it. But that doesn't mean I won't ever. It's just that I love these guys so much. They're so great. Next, I have Beartown by Frederick Bachman. So recently my review of this has like had a spike in viewings. I don't know if it's just that time of year where people are reading it more, but this is about a town called Beartown, which is really, really into hockey. It's all the town thinks that it has going for it. And so the boys on the hockey team are treated like gods. They're treated like they're the coolest shit in the place. And that leads to some issues. It leads to them thinking they can do no wrong. And they're proved right a lot of times. But when one of the people who works for the hockey team, his daughter gets raped by the star hockey player, and the town gets torn apart. It becomes a he said, she said. It becomes a, why did she go into the room with him? Was she drinking? Was she on drugs? Did she want it? Did she change her mind in the middle? And not a lot of ownership being placed on the boy. We are drawn into many characters. This book can be difficult besides the subject matter, like major trigger warnings in here, because there's a lot of jumping around between characters. But the way he does it, it's like he's building and cresting a crescendo of emotions within you. And if you watched my review for this, I mean, you can. I got very emotional talking about this book. I want to read the sequel to this, but I don't, because the emotions that I went through while I was reading this were just so real and painful, because you know this happens every day and all the time. And I hope that the Me Too movement, if it's done any good at all, that it is to change those stigmas and to change those things, because it's a tragedy what happens, and the ramifications of it are devastating. Next, let's talk about one that's a bit controversial for me, but I really, really enjoyed this when I read it. And that is The Fifth Season by N.K. Jemisin. Yes, you will see the third book in this series end up on my worst list of the year because I do not like where this series went. But that does not change the feelings I had when I took this on. So the 5th season is the end of the world. We are living in a time where there are very few humans left on Earth, and Father Earth is literally trying to destroy the people who still live on it. There is crazy weather that happens all the time. There are like just these volatile things. And then there are these people who are called, who have special powers, and they are actively attacked and killed in violent ways. And we start this story with 3 different women at different ages of their lives. And they are all dealing with some very tragic things. And holy crap, there's just so much. And the way that this story unfolds, the way that we learn the information, and when we learn the information, like, it's even a mystery who is telling the story to you. It is weird. It has some hinky things. There's some second person point of view that can really throw you off, but I really enjoyed it a lot. And when all the pieces started to click together, I read this with Murphy's buddy reading group for her Patreons, and as it started to click into place for us, it was so much fun because it was so much fun to theorize what was going on, and I loved it. And though the rest of the series really let me down, this book did not. I had a great time with it. I won't ever be able to reread this because I can't follow it to its conclusion anymore, but it is gut-wrenching and it is amazing. And there's also some great representation in here. There is different sexual orientation representation as well as racial representation, and it's amazing. This is an Own Voices story, and Kay Jemison is a beautiful African-American woman. She's amazing, and this story, at least, was fantastic. Next, I have a trilogy for you. I read the entire Arc of the Scythe trilogy this year because I didn't start these until I think like April or May, and then The Toll came out just last month. This trilogy was fantastic. Neal Shusterman, I have another of his books on my list in a minute here. This story is amazing. You've probably heard this 100 times if you've been on Booktube by now, but the Arc of the Scythe is about we have moved past death in our society, and so for population control, we have these people called Scythes, who they are the only one who can murder someone. And they are fate, they are death, they are self-righteous and corrupt, and no one can stop them. And we're introduced to Citra and Rowan, who both become apprentices to a scythe named Scythe Faraday, who is one of the greatest scythes of their time. He is fair and honest, and he chooses to kill people completely, you know, randomly, like fate would. And there are other scythes, though, who do it in pretty sickening and cruel ways. And there's no one to stop them, no one to police them but themselves. And the journey you go on with these characters is amazing, and it all culminated in one of the most interesting endings I've seen, and I'm beginning to learn that that is a pattern for Shusterman, and I really, really love it. So then let's go right along to the other Shusterman book, which I almost forgot because my sister has this one as well. She steals all my good books, guys. And that is Dry by Neal and Jared Shusterman. So this was written by Neal and his son, and it is about a apocalyptic event where California, their taps get turned off. They're out of water. There's nothing. And we get to see what happens in the space of about a week's time with these teenagers who their families basically explode and implode. One of the families, they are doomsday preppers, and so they are prepared, but in their harshness and unbendingness for and compassion for the people around them leads to some trouble. There is a family who is completely unprepared, but they're kind of smart. And then there are just some crazy people that we pick up along the way. I listened to this on audio, and I listened to it in about 3 days' time because it was freaking intense. The audio was fantastic. Like, oh my gosh, I listened to the first 2 Scythe books online as well, and The Toll I read because I wanted to read it really fast. And there's just something about the narrators he ends up getting. And in Dry, both Neil and Jared, they read different parts of it. It's almost like a full cast. Like there is multiple people reading things. You will get points of view from our characters, and then there'll be like outside people's perspectives about what's happening in different places. And it just all fits together into this puzzle. And it was amazing, and it was terrifying. And it was that kind of apocalyptic event that's not zombies or vampires or anything crazy. It's just running out of water and what would happen. And wow, it was super intense. So next, this book is the only non-5-star book that I have on my favorites list, which I know is weird, but I thought it was so unique. So I started a new Goodreads like book collection, and that is Unique Reads, which the 5th season is on that one as well. But this one is This Mortal Coil by Emily Savada. So this is so weird. Like, it is about a disease that is going through everywhere, and this is kind of sort of a post-apocalyptic one as well, because half of the population is underground in bunkers that this big corporation called Cartaxis has like saved people by putting them underground and keeping them safe. But by doing so, you have to like give up all of your gen tech, which gen tech is genetic technology where people can alter their bodies. So people can give themselves beaks, they can give themselves bigger teeth, they can change the color of their skin by altering their genetic code in this little panel that everyone has on them. And gen tech doesn't like that people can do this to their bodies without permission, because it is a technology that like they first came up with. And so if you want to enter their bunkers, you have to give up your gen tech. And we have a girl, her name is Kat, and she has a disease that doesn't allow her to have like any tech inside of her at all. And she has a very basic panel that has code in there to protect her. And so if she went in there, they would take that from her and she would die. She's also the daughter of the main scientist that they are trying to force to fix this virus that's being spread, because this virus is spread by when the person has it, is infected, they go through a few stages of crazy, a little bit like a zombie, and then when they are fully filled with the virus, they explode. And it changes what this picture looks like to you really quick. They send out their disease in a cloud. So it passes itself through explosion and then spreading the disease everywhere. And this was just, it was fascinating. I also read the sequel to this. The last one, This Vicious Cure, comes out in February, and I can't wait to read that. This went crazy places. It was like a Russian nesting doll. There was secret inside of secret inside of secret, and I'm just, wow. And the ending of This Cruel Design, that book, I had some problems with because it just like, there was too much going on. Too much. It should not have all been in one book. But this one was just right for me, and I really enjoyed it. I read this with Murphy's group as well. She never ended up finishing it, but I loved it, and I liked the second one. So, but it was still 4.5 stars for me, not a full 5 stars, just because of a few of the like pacing issues, but it was so unique, and I just hadn't read anything like it before that I wanted it to be on this list. And then finally, my newest addition, and the reason I put off filming this, because I was in the middle of this book when I was ready to make this video, and I was like, no. This book is going to be on this list. And that is An Unkindness of Magicians by Kat Howard. Wow. This book is so good. This is another one of Murphy's favorites, and she read it last year, and I bought it last year. And you guys picked this one for me to read in December. And oh, wow. So this is about a girl named Sydney, who's a magician. And the magical world is called the Unseen World. And every 20 years, there's this competition, duel, gladiator-style fights where a new house is chosen to rule the unseen world. So they get the majority of the power. They control the House of Shadows, which can't tell you anything about that because spoilers. But it's only been 13 years, and it's time for a new competition. So Sydney is this girl from out of nowhere, and she gets picked up by a house that is trying to create a name for themselves, because when there is a new competition, you can start your own house. So maybe a family wants to split and they want to start their own. And so she gets picked up by this new house, and she's gonna tear the magic world apart. And it's amazing. The magic in here is brutal. The magic in here has a very high cost. In fact, the cost of the magic is the point of the book, which isn't a spoiler because I'm not going to tell you what the cost is or like the whatever, but that would have sold me so much quicker on this book if someone had told me that. So that's the like biggest detail I'm going to give you. This is told in a third person perspective that jumps around quite a lot, which is why a lot of people don't quite like it. There's a lot of characters we see POVs from, but they all serve a purpose. And it's one of those where it's that perfect puzzle where every piece leads into the next, leads into the next. There's a few reveals that I did guess, but not far ahead of time. Like one of them, I literally guessed it and I messaged Murphy and I was like, Murphy, is this what's happening? And then 2 pages later, it's what happened. So a few things I was able to guess, but they weren't like, oh wow, you programmed that so far ahead of time that it wasn't even, fun to guess. No, it was awesome. This book was so good. This was originally a standalone, and I'll tell you, you could read this as a standalone. There is a sequel coming in June of 2020, and I definitely want to read it. I cannot wait to read it. I think it's called A Sheaf of Shadows or like something like that, and I'm super excited, but this really reads well as a standalone, and I think that's fun because there are not a lot of like fantasy like this. This is a low fantasy because it's happening in the real world, but there aren't a lot of fantasies like this where you can just read one book and get the whole story. And this was a powerful story. So I highly suggest it. It was, wow, it was brutal and it was amazing and it was just such a ride. And I'm so glad I waited to film this until it was in here because it deserves to be. And honestly, looking at my stack, it's probably in like the top 2 or 3, but I just finished it. You always have warm fuzzy feelings when you just finish it. So there we are. These were my favorite books of 2019. And you know what? I did get pretty excited talking about them, remembering how great some of them were. I'm really excited for 2020 and to find new favorites. Tell me if any of these were on your favorites list or what you think of them, if I was completely wrong or if you totally agree with me. I make new videos every Monday, Thursday, and Saturday, and you can watch some more of them right now. Bye!